Today, I'm joined by Iain Pritchard, Iain's site manager and former director of production at Bachem Pharmaceuticals. Bachem are a global leader in biotechnology and have a big site in the UK. And Iain's joining us today to talk a little bit about his leadership journey and what they do at Bachem. Iain, welcome to the table.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
How did you become site manager of leading biotechnology company in St Helens?
Well, yeah, quite a story. How far you want to go back?
Let's go back. So
Right
you're
to
a
the
chemist
beginning.
by first discipline?
I went to university, did chemistry. That in itself is a bit of a story. So I actually grew up, obviously, in the 90s. There was a bit of a focus on forensic science. Back then, that kind of piqued my interest, shall we say.
So you're watching Cracker and
Yeah,
Crime
absolutely.
Scene. Yeah.
And I was like, well, I quite fancy doing something in that. And without getting too morbid, the one bit I actually did have a real interest in was doing pathology. So obviously cutting up dead bodies, find out what went wrong with them. That was until I found out you had to do a medical degree. And I kind of lost interest in it, but my mum was kind of at me going, just do the medical degree and you're clever enough, you could do it. And if it doesn't work out in pathology, then you've got a medical degree. So I bowed down. My mum's quite a powerful character, so I bowed down. I applied for medical school. And because I didn't have the passion for it, I got rejected from every single one of them. But the way it was back then, I don't know if it's the same now, you couldn't apply just for medical schools. You had to pick something else in case, like a fallback option. And my fallback option was forensic chemistry at Strathclyde Uni. So it kind of ticked the box that I had in my mind to go away from home. And I did have a strange interest in going to Scotland for some reason. So I went up there, first day of the course, they were like, nobody has ideas about working in forensic science. There's no jobs in forensic science. It's quite a niche industry. There's not a lot of opportunities there. Just embrace the fact you're doing chemistry, and we'll do some forensic classes to keep you interested, but it's a chemistry degree first and foremost. Okay. So that's what I ended up doing. I did my degree. Never planned to come back to home. That was never in my mind. I always saw myself as a bit of a ambassador, I suppose, for the region. I never planned to move back here, probably because I didn't think there was much opportunity for me here. But I had no money, so I had to go right back to the bank of mum and dad. Can I come and stay with you for a bit? And again, my mum going, you got to find a job. You can't be on the dole for too long. So I literally applied for all kinds of different things. Every time I applied for a job, not necessarily science-based, it was right, okay, can I imagine a career path doing public sector work or working in data or whatever else I applied for. And next thing, this thing came along saying there's a job working in laboratories in St Helens. And I was like, really? I grew up in this town. I know nothing about chemical manufacturing industry, a business in St Helens. And I applied for it. I turned up for an interview and I was like, okay, this looks a bit... So we say a backstreet kind of operation.
Okay.
And I actually got rejected the first time. I got turned down and I kept the rejection letter. Not intentionally, I found it a couple of years ago. I still had it in my files to say I'd been turned down for the job. But they contacted me again about 3 months later and said, we've got a new role come up. Would you still be interested? And I started in January 2004. Little did I know that the company had just recently been bought by Bachem, and one of Bachem's commitment to the company was that they would move them to a better facility, so more state-of-the-art laboratory space. And one of my first roles actually was in that transition, literally moving the company brick by brick, if you like, to the new site. My mum, I think within 2 weeks I was coming home with paint on me and all sorts. I was like, what have you actually signed up for here? Because the previous place was rented, so we had to take the facility back to its previous kind of...
So you had a delapse clause in the lease and put it back as it was.
Had to paint the walls and the floors and everything. I mean, I was like, what have you signed up for? But we moved and kind of the business, I joined the business at the right time. It kind of started, the growth in the business really picked up. Did a lot of work got a lot of new business in the diagnostic and cosmetic sector at the time.
So they're both taking off at that point?
Yeah. We got a lot of new customers in that field. So face creams at that time were having pentapeptides was kind of the advertising slogan of companies like L'Oreal and things like that. Literally, peptides manufactured in St. Helens were going into these development test creams and face creams and things like that. And diagnostics was the medical diagnostic, in vitro diagnostic kits we supplied to companies working in that field. And so the organisation started to grow, and because we were taking more people on, they put a bit more of an organisational structure in place. So within 2 years of joining, I was offered a role as a manager in the lab I was working in at the time. I was then cheeky and asked them would they sponsor me to do a PhD, because there was still a bit of a stigma attached to the industry of, if you want to get anywhere here, you probably have to have a PhD. And thankfully they agreed. And they had a collaboration at the time with Imperial College.
Which is a really prestigious...
Yeah, I mean, I was extremely fortunate to get that opportunity. And that group that I was working with were working in peptides for appetite regulation. So 20 years ago, the kind of precursors to the weight loss drugs that are on the market now. Not quite the same products, but a lot of the research that would have helped develop those drugs. Ozempic and Mounjaro are on the market now, and there's obviously all kind of other compounds that will probably get put through clinical trials, etc., in the next few years. So yeah, that was again an opportunity that fell into my lap, if you like, and it was tough. It was 7 years of juggling working full time. So started a young family at the time, and having to go up and down from making peptides in St. Helens, taking them down to London to do like the biological work, so cell test work or animal work. And then the write-up at the end was, I literally took it to the wire. So I think the day of submission was a Saturday for some reason. And on the Thursday evening, I was up literally all night doing the literature, the references. Got to 6 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I've not been to bed yet. I was like, right, I need to change the scenery. So I went into work. I had keys at the time, so I could let myself into work. Change the scenery, I'll carry on this work. 8 o'clock, the people came in to start work that day and found me asleep at the bench. But I got it done, got it submitted. And because I had the PhD, I'll be honest, at the time, that meant that I was kind of earmarked for development, I suppose you would say. So 2013, the guy who was running the company at the time retired, and there was kind of a succession then, meant that I became director of production. So I went from actually doing the job, doing the manufacturing work myself, to kind of more of an overview, so overall responsibility for manufacturing. And did that for 10 years. And again, saw a lot of growth in the company. We became ISO accredited in 2017, which again led to more business in the diagnostic sector. And then it would have been 2022, my boss at the time took me to one side and said, I'm just letting you know I'm planning to retire next year, take early retirement. Ultimately, it's not my decision, but I would recommend that you're the person who takes over from me. So I was very fortunate. I was only 43 at the time, but they had faith in me to run the site in St. Helens. So I'm just coming up to 2 years in that role, which is a long-winded way of saying, how did you get to where you are now?
That's, you know, there is no better barometer or measure of somebody's kind of confidence. If, you know, somebody said, you know, I'm retiring, you've obviously worked your way up from in the ranks from I think synthesis chemist, where you kind of went into to group leader to director of production. Ambition's been a kind of overriding theme, I guess, for you from day one. Is you've always said yes to a challenge, and doing a PhD part time. For most people, that idea of working full time, doing a PhD, having a family, that takes a lot of grit and commitment. Where did all that come from?
I mean, hard work. Certainly both my parents worked extremely hard. They had very different careers. My dad was service engineer for forklift trucks. So he worked on the docks for 20, 30 years, but that's all he ever wanted to do. He didn't have kind of aspirations. He had no interest in being a manager, going into the office thing, but he really did drum into me about working hard. I always remember I had a paper round when I was 12, 13, and it wasn't a daily thing. It was delivering the free papers, every week. So they get dropped at the house on a Wednesday, and you had a couple of days to post them. And for one reason or another, I hadn't done anything for 3 days, and they were still sitting there on a Sunday morning. And I remember he burst into my room, he'd get out of bed now, go and post those papers. And I was like, it's Sunday. He's like, people are counting on that paper. He goes, get out there and get it done now. And I think he said to me, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing properly. And that's kind of the ethos that my dad drilled into me about hard work and making sure that you did everything properly. But my mum was a lot more aspirational. So she worked for Liverpool Council before she had kids. And then when we got a bit older, she retrained as a teacher. So she went into education. She was a maths whiz. So both my brothers work in finance. I did okay at maths, but I was a bit more scientific orientated. So she was a maths teacher, but then she ended up moving or diversifying into special educational needs.
Which is a tough part of the industry, or tough responsibility. Sense. So
she worked at McGull High for quite a few years in that department. But again, she never kind of rested on her laurels to say, and again, you kind of see this from afar growing up, that that's not it for her. She wants to do more. So she was always applying for head of department roles at other schools, and then ultimately she became head of the pupil referral unit for St. Helens. First, like high school students, and then overall responsibility for every kid from 5 to 16. And she did that. She ran that. And I never went in to see what she was doing, but you could see when she was coming home how much of a challenge that kind of work was for her. But she was always saying yes to stuff. I guess that's where it came from for me. Is I'm quite laid back as a person, but at the same time, ambitious, wanting to do more, wanting to try different things.
Do you think your parents understood at the time, as kind of, or even you understood at the time, that the role model was there, the kind of the framework was being set, the work ethic and the commitment and the drive? Were you conscious at the time that you were absorbing that behaviour? Do you think they were conscious they were setting that?
I think they were hoping they were setting the right idea. I don't know if at the time I was absorbing it. I was kind of typical teenager, probably rebelling against the parents a little bit. But they always say to me, certainly my dad, when he's had a couple of drinks, so proud of the four of us, the kind of lives you've had, the careers you've gone on and have, so yeah, it's nice.
Fantastic. And the site you got, St. Helens at the moment, in head count is how big's the site?
So we are just in the process of recruiting our 50th person. So globally, we're still a small part. So the company has over, I think, nearly 2,500 people worldwide, mainly based in Switzerland and California.
But that's a staff of 50. That's a lot of responsibility, and a site that's yours to manage and run.
Yeah, that was a bit of an eye opener to me. I was always warned, the personnel, the people side of things is going to be the biggest challenge, and it makes it difficult to switch off when you know you've got that much responsibility and all these people kind of looking to you to guide them. But again, I've kind of gone, well, I might as well just say yes and see what happens and take it from there. And I've got people I can lean on for advice, so I'm still very close to my predecessor. Still see her on a regular basis, so she's my sounding board if there's any problems. Or one of the benefits, we're a small site, we're kind of financially independent, but I've got the corporate structure behind me to be able to go and speak to those people and say, can you help here? We've got this issue or that issue, and I have that support as well.
But you're still essentially running your own business unit.
Yeah, day to day.
I mean, a big corporation.
Day to day, I'm not checking in with people outside of the organisation on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, there's a lot of on my head.
Bachem have got a great reputation as a company. Talk us through a little bit about the peptides industry and what Bachem do.
So Bachem as a company is 50 plus years old. It was established in Basel, or just outside Basel in Switzerland. That's where the name comes from, actually. Basel Chemistry. So you have to say Bachem or Bachem. Depends how you say Basel as a place.
Okay. So German-speaking part of Switzerland, yeah.
So it's not Bachem. Some people make the mistake. That's definitely not allowed. So yeah, we manufacture historically peptides. More recent times we've moved into oligonucleotides. So there's a bit of synergy between those two type of molecules and how they're made chemically. But the history's there with peptides. And as I say, established in Switzerland, there's now 4 manufacturing sites under GMP conditions, 2 in Switzerland, 2 in California, and a 3rd site earmarked in Switzerland by the end of the decade. And why peptides are becoming such a kind of a booming industry at the minute is weight loss drugs. So I mentioned before Ozempic, Mounjaro, they're both peptide-based drugs. You only have to go on the Daily Mail website to see how prevalent they are in the kind of general community at the minute. There's constant references to them, both in good ways and bad ways. But that means everyone wants a piece of that pie because it could be a game-changing kind of industry disruptor in that regard. So the industry can't meet the demand fast enough. So that's why the company's growing so much. In the UK, we're different. We're not a GMP site. So we work with customers at the early development stages. So customers may be developing weight loss drugs or looking for peptides for other indications. So I think off the back of the growth of these weight loss drugs, there's been kind of a renewed spotlight on peptides to say, well, actually, here's proof of concept. They can be used as therapeutics.
So what other therapeutics kind of are on the pipeline in the industry?
So, I mean, cancer obviously is a big thing. Can we use peptides for cancer treatments? Other kind of small, less well-known diseases, again, could have the benefits of using peptides.
So you're inhibiting a biological process with the peptide. That's the
possibly, yeah. I mean, there's other indications. So, I mean, I mentioned I did the PhD in weight loss drugs. So, the way they work is when you eat something, your body naturally produces hormones to tell you to stop. It's a natural process. It's that's in its simplest form. There's many different mechanisms that go on in the body. Obviously, what the body doesn't want to do is starve you. So it's constantly trying to override those feelings of I've eaten too much. And what they did is they isolated those hormones. And peptides are chains of amino acids. So they isolate the hormones, and they proved in animal studies that if you inject an overload of these hormones, then the animals will reduce the amount of food they take in. The problem was you couldn't develop those as drugs because the body naturally knows how to break those hormones down. So you'd be injecting yourself every hour to try and suppress your appetite. So where the kind of the cleverness is you modify the peptide sequence to A, make it more effective, and B, make it less likely that the body's going to break it down.
So you introduce a novelty or an alienness to the chain that the body doesn't naturally know how to metabolize, and that interrupts the process. Right. Okay.
So these then bind to the receptors that tell your brain to stop eating, and because they can bind stronger, because there's more in the system, because it's not been broken down, then you have a greater effect. That's how they work. I say that's where my background was. I can speak more confidently about the way those mechanisms work. But certainly cancers, Alzheimer's disease again is a big thing. That there's a focus from a peptide point of view in the amyloid beta proteins that form on the brain when you have Alzheimer's disease.
The plaque.
That's the plaque. So they're peptides. They can be chemically synthesized. We do quite a lot of that work ourselves in St. Helens. And obviously people are looking at those molecules and saying, how can we kind of prevent that formation?
So this must be a really exciting, it's biohacking to me, it's bioengineering, it's looking at those kind of natural aging processes or metabolic process and saying, okay, how can we intervene to stop the negativities? That must be really exciting, and you were doing it 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that we, when we get customers who are kind of are open to telling us a little bit about what they're doing, obviously they can't tell us everything. It really does engage the people in the team, because there can be an element of just working and churning out products and not really knowing where they're going. Yeah. But when we get those customers who do share a bit of information with us, you can see the engagement with people. Or I'm working on potential cure for Alzheimer's, or going for blue sky thinking there. But that's one of the things I'm really keen to do whenever we get a bit of information from a customer, is share it with the team. This is the work we're doing. This is what you're influencing moving forward.
Bachem, despite it being a big company, you seem to have a big, almost a family feel to certainly the UK site or the St Helens site. There seems to be a sort of small family business sort of ethos to the way you manage
absolutely.
things. Was that there before you started, or is that something you've instigated?
No, I was there before I started. So when I joined 20 years ago, there was only, I don't know, a dozen or so people working there. So everyone knew everyone. Everyone went for lunch together. But yeah, even as we've grown, we've tried to kind of keep that. You know, my leadership team, there's many members of that have been with the company longer than I have. So we've got people pushing 35 years with the business. So we don't tend to bring a lot of people in at the higher levels. What we tend to do is recruit people at the beginning of their careers and do our best to retain them, you know, and kind of ensue them with the ethos, the ethics of the company. And I'm still at the point now where I know everyone. I know everyone's name. And beyond that, I know a little bit about everyone as well. So it kind of helps with that, kind of building that family atmosphere.
It must be a big kind of shock for people as you know, you've got a small gang of people from St Helens, and you guys are rolling with VPs and directors of a big multinational company. Is there a kind of a learning curve to that, or is there a culture clash? How does it? People, I think, would be surprised if you said to kids in St Helens, "Look, you know, a few years' time, you're going to be rolling with vice presidents of big international biotechnology company." What would your advice be, or what your observations on that?
About being personal, you know, getting to know people. I like nothing better than having those guys come over from Switzerland, California, spend a bit of time with us, realise, as you say, the kind of the family, the friendly ethos around everyone, and you get to know them on a personal level. You know, take them out for a dinner, a couple of drinks, and then they cease to become a VP of this, that, and the other, and they're just a person that you can spend time with and kind of break down those barriers. I'm quite happy to take people out from the team and get them to get to know these people, and as you say, instill them with that kind of ambition that they could one day be in that position themselves, maybe.
Because you're a company man, you've come up through the ranks within Bachem, and I think you've got a kind of strong kind of ethos and ambition for that to be something that's open to other people as well, as to grow people within the business.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I see myself as a custodian for the business. I'm here for a period of time, and hopefully it's in a healthy position to hand over to the next person. And nothing would make me prouder than handing it over to somebody who I've kind of brought through the organisation myself. You know, I think there's a strong history at the site that's what we do. And yeah, I would say breaking down some of the stigmas I mentioned earlier. You know, I don't believe now you need to have a PhD to do well in this company. I think that's kind of shared by other people as well. And you don't necessarily have to have scientific degrees to do well in the company. We've got people who've joined us, you know, after finishing school, or maybe they've gone on a bit of a journey elsewhere and then come and joined us. And, you know, we trust our training program, trust our ability to kind of coach people through roles and then let them develop. Don't put barriers in place, you know. I don't turn around and go, well, you can't do that role because you haven't been to university, or, you know, if you've shown an aptitude to doing the work in the lab firsthand, then that trumps anything around qualifications on a piece of paper, in my opinion.
So aptitude and skills and attitude more important than
absolutely, yeah. I'd say some of the values that I had myself, you know, I've got a foot in both camps, I guess. I've got letters after my name that mean something, but at the same time, I've got kind of a work ethos and kind of, yeah, I'll do anything as well. You know, I'm not kind of above my station to say I can't do that. You know, if something needs doing,
you could get back on the bench and do stuff.
Maybe not that much. I've got a new rule from a few months ago that I don't touch anything anymore.
Okay.
Because I was showing someone around recently, and we have instruments that were there when I joined the company, and then instruments that we've purchased in more recent times. And I thought, kind of naively, that they effectively did the same thing. So I made the mistake of opening a door on one of the instruments to showcase what was going on to the visitor, and realised there was a safety mechanism on it, and it shut the whole instrument down because the door had been opened. And that wasn't there when I worked on those instruments. So after that, I was like, right, I'm not touching anything involved in the product. But yeah, even like a couple of weeks ago, we had the pains of any small business. Personnel wise, we had a few members of staff off sick, in fact, in one different department, and I offered, as I said, if I need to go down there and put a coat on and be told what to do by someone who knows how to do the job better than me, then I'll do it, because that's just the way I am. And so, yeah, between those kind of ethos and then, my kind of vision for the company, I'm happy for anyone to kind of progress. I say you don't have to have barriers put in place in terms of qualifications, and we'll do our best as a team to kind of support those people. They can do the job. If they want to learn a bit more about what goes behind it, then we're happy to do that as well. And
I mean, you've talked about the kind of the weight loss technologies that peptides apply to, but for you guys, in vitro diagnostics is a big thing.
Yeah. So because we're not a GMP site, we're not supplying product direct to the pharmaceutical industry, except if they're doing early stage research. So, go back 10, 15 years when we were looking for kind of sectors to move into to grow the business. One of the niche areas for us was in vitro diagnostics. So the material peptides for in vitro diagnostic kits don't have to be made under GMP conditions because it's a non-invasive kit. You don't have that requirement in place. But there's a lot of kits out there that have peptides as their raw materials. So as I said, that was an area we looked to move into 15 years ago. So a lot of growth off the back of it. And then, so an advantage to us in kind of moving forward with our quality systems. So instead of just having our own in-house quality system, let's get it accredited against.
This is ISO number
13485 or 13485. So it's specific for medical devices.
Right. Okay.
So it's my quality manager says it's 9001 with bells on. So 9001 is kind of ubiquitous across all industries. This is specific to the medical device field. So there's no requirement on us as a supplier in the industry to have it, but we see it as an advantage to have that accreditation because it gives our customers the kind of faith that we kind of manufacture our products to certain standards, and it makes us, we think, a more attractive partner in the business.
Fantastic. So diagnostic side of things, peptide industry's grown in general, and that standard you guys have strived for and achieved, that's opened up new markets. That was always part of the vision. That was the plan. That makes the UK site more competitive, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, we're up against, in the kind of non-GMP world, we're up against competitors are always going to offer lower costs or faster delivery time. So we have to kind of set ourselves above in that regard. So the ISO does help, really pushes the quality side of things. Okay, you've got to pay a bit more, or you've got to wait a bit longer, but you've got that quality guarantee behind it, that the material we're going to send to you meets your requirements in that regard. But yeah, I mean, the business is, the industry's growing, and we're having to grow with it. The demand in terms of quantity of material as well has changed drastically. So I always remember when I joined, we were making a big fuss about the fact we had an order for 1 gram of material, because historically they worked in milligram quantities. That's all you ever needed for that kind of work at the time. Now we're routinely generating 50 plus grams of final product. Wow. We've had to scale the business because of that, and we're still kind of going through some challenges in terms of infrastructure, etc., to meet those demands. But we see the opportunities to kind of grow the business a bit more by making ourselves more efficient around scale-up production.
So you're always innovating, and the ISO accreditation itself is an innovation within the business.
Yeah, and the good thing about, okay, we've got standards that we follow in terms of the ISO, but because we're not we're not GMP, we've got a bit of flexibility. So we can look to innovate, we can look to change things in a much shorter time frame than if you were working in GMP.
For anyone looking at going for ISO standards, what's the journey been with the staff? Because it's a culture shock bringing it in. How did you go about keeping everybody on side and people seeing it as an opportunity?
Yeah, it was a challenge, as I say. At the time, I was working in manufacturing and having to get that message across that we can't just do things however we feel like doing on that particular day. There's certain procedures we have to follow, certain documentation that has to be completed to a certain standard. To be fair, we started that journey, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years before we actually went for the ISO accreditation. So it wasn't like we just went to overnight implement a quality system that we would try and achieve ISO accreditation off the back of. It was a 4 or 5 year journey before we went, okay, now's the next one. Now's the next step is, how do we do that? And even that was a huge step, because we had to work towards, I think it was a 2003 version of the certificate, which we got, and then we were told that expires in 12 months, so you need to get the next version in 12 months. And that came with extra kind of requirements. So that was, a rough couple of years to get that up to speed. But to be honest, it's worth the pain, because now, touch wood, it kind of runs itself. It requires a certain amount of management, obviously, but we can schedule an audit, be it from a customer, be it from a notified body, and there isn't the kind of weeks of panic building up to it. It's kind of runs in the background. We do the kind of the sense checks on everything a couple of days beforehand, and it's kind of embedded in the business now.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you touched on kind of vision for the business and vision for the site. What is that vision? Where are you guys heading into the future?
I mean, we want to, play our part in the organisation. As I say, that there is always, I suppose, that little feeling of being the youngest, the run to the litter, for want of a better word. Probably get in trouble for saying that, but yeah, we are, feel like we constantly have to kind of prove ourselves. We're still a key part of the company. And don't get me wrong, we get all the feedback to suggest that we're doing the right things in that regard. But for me personally, it's, again, touching on the ambition side of things, why, we don't have to just keep doing what we've been doing. We can target bigger projects, larger scales, without stepping on toes on other sites, which is not what I want to do.
The common theme from people we've spoken to from novel programs, that kind of perpetual restlessness is, you're doing a good job, it's fine, but you want to do more. You want to just try and innovate. So that's been a part of your career all the way along. And
yeah, I don't want to rest on the laurels, and there's always better ways of doing things. So, I mentioned before that I don't touch anything now. So I'm not an innovator in regards to, I'm not down there doing the work myself and looking for the new methods, the new way of doing things. But my role now, I think, is giving those people in the team the confidence to feel that they can explore those options, and not have me pull them over the coals and say, listen, how much does that cost, and where's the results of that? And if they've got that confidence that, yeah, okay, the business has got metrics, we have to make a certain amount of money, etc., but we have got room to kind of test things out, try new methods. Obviously, they're all not going to work, but if we hit across one or two every year, then we kind of develop the company, take it one step further away from where we were, when I joined.
That's it. And you've kind of stepped outside the business as well. You're on Liverpool City Region Combined Authority Health and Life Science Boards. You're advising local governments. You've ran conferences on peptides, global conferences in the UK. So you're really bringing the industry to the Northwest, and you're starting to be able to influence policy and have a say. So how does that feel, that sort of transition to being an advocate for the industry?
Yeah, it kind of really enthuses me, kind of motivates me as much as growing the business back in UK. Then that extra motivation of kind of making a difference locally.
How did you get into it then? So you're on Health and Life Sciences Board.
Yeah, again, it kind of feeds back into being in the right place at the right time. So they were looking to establish these advisory boards late 2023, with an idea that the board was fully representative of the region. So we've got a strong health and life sciences community across the city region, but they wanted to make sure that all the areas were represented and all the sectors were represented. So industry, academia, public.
So areas being the boroughs, the 6 boroughs in the city region. Yeah.
So I was fortunate, I guess, in that there wasn't, we're kind of unique in being in St Helens. There's not a lot of other health and life sciences businesses in the borough of St Helens. There are some, but not many. So I kind of had an advantage there. So I was invited to apply, went through the application process. Again, probably a little bit of imposter syndrome at the beginning to go, really, you want my input? But they were adamant. Yeah, they wanted, as I say, they were keen to have me on board. So I joined that officially start of 2024. So we are, 18 months into, I think, like a 3-year journey for the board members who were co-opted at the beginning, to try and kind of influence, as you say, policy around health and life sciences in the city region.
Being a private sector guy coming from a big corporate into that sort of government policy advisor role, what's been the lessons there? Was that a culture shock? Has anything surprised you?
Yeah, many ways. I mean, for a kick-off, the first couple of meetings, I was just sitting there going, I don't understand half of what's being said here in terms of different departments or different funding bodies, etc., being named. It was all kind of new to me and a real steep learning curve in that regard. Obviously, as you say, coming from industry into kind of more public sector work, perhaps, hopefully, as those of us who come in that avenue have been able to influence a little bit about getting things done a bit quicker than typically done in the public sector. I don't know, people other than me may have a different opinion on that, but that was kind of, as we talked about before we came on a, being in industry, you're used to deadlines and expecting results, and you can't spend,
everything's costed, and
time's money, etc. So hopefully we've influenced a little bit in that. We've made a lot of progress, I would say, in the last 18 months after a slow start where we're all kind of finding our feet a little bit and getting to know each other. And that was one of the other big things for me, is that, really understanding the health and life sciences community in the city region. I was as guilty as anyone of not really understanding how many businesses we had in the region working in those kind of fields. All you hear about is AstraZeneca and those guys in Speak, but there's a lot more going across the borough. So it's been great from a networking point of view, getting to know people and kind of bringing us together more as a community, and hopefully that will lead to better results for the region.
So Liverpool City region was kind of ahead of the curve on devolution and doing these sector boards. So it's probably becoming a model for the wider UK for the devolved kind of government agenda. What advice would you give if you were kind of Iain Pritchard out there advising Mayor of Manchester, Newcastle, different combined authorities to really make the most of life sciences sector? Where would you start looking for government? How would you advise them?
I think it is bringing, as Liverpool have done, bring the people in from industry, get them speaking to the people in academia and the public sector, and trying to get them together as a collective to move forward with one vision. That's what we're trying to do here. You don't know who you don't know, kind of thing, and I look at Bachem UK as quite a small company in the region, but I look at who I've got to know and who I've been able to connect with, as a result of this, and I think it's going to grow the industry in the region. Not me personally, but if I've done my little bit and everyone else on the board's done their little bit, then we've fostered a stronger community in that regard. So
there's power of the network and potential for collaboration.
So, at the moment I'm looking at can we outsource some of our analytical work locally as best as possible, and working on the board and speaking to people, at the University of Liverpool or other industries in the area, realise there's opportunities for us to keep business in the city region. So we can't do all the analysis ourselves on site. So, at the moment, we have the decision: do we send samples to our headquarters in Switzerland? But those guys over there are extremely busy because of the growth in the industry.
It's a long way to fly samples as well.
It is indeed, yeah. Yep. So, from a sustainability point of view, if you save some air miles in that regard by keeping it local. So, it's opened doors in terms of what's available at the university. Again, I show my naivety. I didn't know the capabilities at University of Liverpool until I got to speak to the right people. Now that I do know, I see great opportunity for us to partner moving forward, which will benefit us in terms of project timelines, etc., but also benefit the university.
It's that public service bit A lot of business leaders would say, look, I'm busy running the company. I don't have time for these boards. But for you, it's been a rewarding experience, and you've seen an impact. You've seen a benefit for the business. You've seen a benefit for the region from doing it. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, get the odd person at work saying, "Oh, you're going again somewhere else? Leaving site. You're the site manager, but you're not on site." But yeah, I can kind of give a long list of things I think have benefited the organisation through going to these board meetings or joining other initiatives within the local region. So not just the combined authority, but more locally to St Helens as well.
Fantastic. And we hear a lot, we've just had the industrial strategy come out, so we know life sciences is at the centre of kind of UK's ambitions for growth. As somebody who's in the industry, how do you see that panning out? Is it a bright future for life sciences? Do you think we need to be more focused on which particular disciplines we're looking at? Is it an opportunity for you guys at Bachem?
Well, from a Bachem point of view, anything that's developing peptides, then obviously we'd say that's the area you have to focus on. But that's a bit too specific for the whole country. You mentioned the conference that organised, or co-organised, I should say. I shouldn't take all the credit for it. Last week, that was bringing together the peptide community in the UK, which I don't think has been done very often in the past.
It's a niche scene.
It is a niche scene, yeah. But we had people from industry, academia, again, bringing the mix together.
So tell us about the conference you've organised. So you've just had your second peptides conference for the UK?
Well, no. So the first one I organised was an internal Bachem conference, but we just had the inaugural, I think we called it, UK Peptide Symposium, which we took the decision to host in St Helens to give us the opportunity to showcase our site at the end of the symposium, which was a challenge. As with organising anything like that, you probably know yourself. Everything that can go wrong does go wrong. So we had derailed trains, meaning that we lost a speaker. So we had to rejig the agenda, etc. But yeah, the opportunity to bring people under one roof who kind of all talk the same language, for want of a better word, and realise there's opportunities to try and strengthen the UK as a hub for, as you say, a particularly niche thing, peptides, but why that can't be applied to other sectors within health and life sciences. Again, it's about people kind of devoting the time to not just focus on the day job, take a step out and go, let's see if we can pull these people together. So I say I did my bit. My colleague in business development did most of the work in that regard, but we came away on Friday going, yeah, that was definitely worth all the pain that went into planning it, etc.
So delegates from across the UK come into St Helens, come to Liverpool to
listen to talks about peptides and kind of shining the light on what people are doing in academia, what we're doing in industry. Obviously, there's still a certain cloak of secrecy around what goes on in industry, but sharing what we can about what we're doing and firing people's ideas.
What does the industry need more of from universities, from governments? What would help growth? What would help kind of innovation within the industry more?
It's the boring stuff, like funding. I keep talking about connections, networking, making people aware of what opportunities are out there for themselves. I mean, one of the first things we did in the cluster board when we got together is realise that there'd actually been a round of funding in the city region around health and life sciences that us as stakeholders were not aware of.
Okay, how did that happen?
Kind of, it was who you knew.
Right,
So,
okay.
The board came after the first round of funding was kind of opened up for applications. So most of the business, certainly in the room, were like, well, no one told us about this. We didn't know anything about this. So yeah, breaking down that kind of, it's who you know, making it available to everyone and making it easy as well. I know how difficult it can be to kind of apply for funding. There's always barriers put in place.
Yeah.
So, for example, for all the will in the world, we're an SME. We're 50 people in the UK, financially independent. We only invest what the money we make at the UK site, but because we have a connection to a holding company in Switzerland, then we're disqualified from SME status most of the time.
Right.
Which I understand, there has to be certain rules put in place, but
But if you're running your own P&L, you're responsible for your own site, you're employing people in the region.
Yep.
That seems to be the objective. So
Yeah.
why
Then
not?
you go on the website and you find out, oh, they're part of a bigger organization. So that's it, gone. And that disqualifies us from a lot of things.
That must be frustrating.
Yeah. So opportunities come up and you're interested in this, okay. And then you look into it and you go, do you have to be SME status? Yeah. Okay, well, you're going to have to leave it there. We can't do that.
So those artificial rules around funding are a barrier.
Yeah. And as I say, I appreciate there has to be regulations in place. We can't just be get political then. You can't go throwing money away to everybody who asks for it. But yeah, they can be a little bit frustrating.
Do you think the centralised model or the local model or the sector-specific approach is best? Would you rather kind of have a national task force for life sciences that was staging interventions under industrial strategy, or would you rather it be locally based?
I think it has to be local to give everyone a chance, but then you have to empower the local people. You know, the people making the decisions locally have to have the power to kind of drive those things through. Because if it stayed national, for one of all the will in the world, it'd all get focused.
Oxford, Cambridge.
Yep. Yeah. And my message to people always, when they come, certainly locally, and have a look around our site is, listen, this proves you don't have to go to Oxford, Cambridge to have a meaningful career in life sciences. We're just one of many companies in the city region doing, I like to think, groundbreaking work in that sector. But so much of the focus is on Oxford, Cambridge. That's where everyone wants to go, to study, and if they're aspirational, and that's where everyone thinks they have to go if they want to have a meaningful career in life sciences. And don't get me wrong, there's fabulous companies and universities, etc., in that area, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
It's something for me when I kind of think of Bachem. I mean, we do have a world-class biotechnology company in St Helens, and not enough people know about that. And I think kids in schools and local community, how many people know that you guys are there? I know you said when you started you didn't know the business was there, but
Yeah.
Now I think you're doing a lot of work with schools, aren't you, and trying to get the message out there.
Yeah, I think maybe in the past we were guilty of, because we don't sell products locally. Our customer base is mainly in Europe and the US, that we don't have to make ourselves known locally to drive the business effectively. But I wanted to change that. I wanted to kind of say, and I realized to do that you have to devote the time. So I wanted to make the time to do that. And so, yeah, we're a partner in the pilot study for the Equilex Work Experience Initiative. So it's a new way of looking at pre-16 work experience. So
that's tough. Pre-16 is difficult to give meaningful work experience in your line of work, I guess.
Yeah, so there's no way we could bring somebody in at the age of 14, 15 and throw them into the labs and have them working with some of the materials that we have, from a hazardous point of view, and also the value of the material we're manufacturing. So, what can we offer? Under the classic umbrella of work experience, someone at that age, not a lot. Sit in the office and file away or photocopy, and who's going to come away from that inspired to work in life sciences? So that was my experience for many years, and we had one or two cases where someone twisted the arm to say, can a friend of a friend come in? And it just never really worked out. But I was really intrigued by this Equilex project, which is, instead of giving a pupil one work experience, 1 week or 2 weeks working in one company, give them 2 weeks across their entire school career, a mixture of experiences. So I think that's where then we can, really inspired then to say, well, actually we can do that. We have, my personal beliefs about trying to inspire the next generation, plus a number of people on my team who are really STEM orientated, STEM focused, keen to go out and spread the word. Can we play a part in that? So very happy to say on Wednesday of this week, we've got our first group of students coming in from St Cuthbert School in St Helens, so just down the road from us.
Yeah.
I think they're Year 9 students coming for what they're calling an Inspire session, Inspire and Engage. So those guys are coming on site. We're not asking them to do any work, but we're asking them to kind of have a look around, realise that there's a company like this, almost a stone's throw from their school. And so they don't have to, if they're inspired to work in life sciences, they don't have to think about, well, going to university necessarily. It's not for everyone. You can still work in an industry like this without having been to university.
Which is a really unorthodox message for life sciences. I think most people would assume you need a degree to go into life science, but that's not the case.
No. I think if you've got the right aptitude, the right ability to kind of work hard and listen to follow instructions, then you can certainly at entry level join our company. And then once you're in, as I mentioned before, I don't put any barriers in place around how far that person can go from a career development point of view. And hey, who wants to end up saddled with the amount of student debt that's flying around at the minute? And of course, there will always be a place in the business and in the wider sector for people who've been through university. We need that. We need those people with the core understanding of the chemistry that goes behind our processes, but not everyone has to have that kind of exposure from an education point of view. There are careers in the company, and there are people working in my team now who didn't go to university, who are in pretty good high positions in the organisation. So that's the first one. And the second one is, if you do go down the university route, do what I did, maybe go to somewhere else in the UK, but know that there's a place you can come back to. If you want to stay connected to where you grew up, then we're here in St Helens, just near around the corner from where you went to school, and we'll see you in 10 years' time with a degree under your arm. You might come.
But for the Equiflex program, sort of who set it up, and how many businesses like you are taking part at the moment?
So the combined authority are running it.
Okay. This is something separate from your board duties. This
I just happened to be on. I think I knew someone. I was invited to a kind of an initial meeting about it, and because I'm guilty of saying yes all the time, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll come down and have a listen about this. And because it was about work experience, I did kind of feel strongly about it. They were asking for input from employers, and I had input, which was, we can't engage with that kind of program in the classical sense. So yeah, it's with the combined authority, but slightly different. So I think it's a goal of the Labour government. So they have written into their manifesto, and they launched a few pilot projects. So Liverpool City region is one of them. There are a couple others around the country. But I've met some really good people. It's completely separate to the health and life sciences side of things. People from the careers departments at the combined authority, people from education, people from other industries. I ended up they launched the project at a plastering company in Kirby.
Okay.
So they've got an academy there for teaching young people. So they basically rigged up a pretend building site in their facility in Kirby. And then they ended up with Steve Rotherham plastering for the cameras. But it was a really, really eye-opener to, what can be done. If a company kind of commits to it. And as you said before, it's, we can all quite easily go, I'm too busy for that, I can't do that, I've got business to run. But if everyone just gives a little bit of time back, then you can see what can come off the back of it.
Are you getting the feeling that there's more of a movement towards looking to inspire the youth? I don't know whether it was COVID, I don't know what it was, but we seem to be at a pause where we've got more business leaders saying we've got to do more for young people, we've got to get people into the job market, we've got disruption from AI, we've had the challenges of social distancing and the negative effects of kind of loneliness and isolation and absence of role models. Is that something you're kind of getting a sense of? Is now is the time that people are really putting their backs into doing more to engage young people?
Yeah, I think we have to. Kids myself, you kind of see where they're going nowadays, how easy it is for them to become completely disengaged with the real world via their phones and other screens. And yeah, I think the pandemic as well impacted greatly. We're just about to start a placement with the university. So one of the chemistry courses runs a year in industry.
Okay.
Placement scheme as part of the course. So that's, the student comes out of university for a year, works in industry, does a project with that company, and then goes back to finish off the degree. So it's something I did many, many years ago. And something I've always felt strongly about trying to kind of promote as much as possible. So we kind of finally signed up to the scheme at the end of last year. And we had, I think, 4 or 5 applicants from students on the course to do the placement with us. And I just naturally just went, okay, well, come on site and we'll do like interviews and things like that. And
You put them at a bench and see them work, or
yeah. And like a little bit of a, for want of a better word, speed dating approach. So they kind of spent 15, 20 minutes with each of us, 4 or 5 of us over the course of the day. And when they arrived on site, the look of panic on them, that they were having to do something in real life, face to face. Someone said to me, we haven't done this for any other placement. It's all been on Teams. And I was like, it's natural that you'd want to speak to someone in person and get to know them a little bit and see how they act in different scenarios, such as working at the bench, rather than have them tell you over a screen that I can do this, and this. And of the 5, I think it was students, 1 stood out in terms of the fact that she could engage, with everyone. She was really engaging, let's say, with everyone that she spent time with. And it was afterwards we realised it's because she's the student staff like liaison person.
Right, okay.
So she's used to having to speak to grown-ups.
Just about 19, 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was the obvious choice for us, and I'm glad to say she's due to start in a couple of weeks.
Do you think that would have come across in a Teams interview, or
No.
would have been less between it, or she wouldn't have had the opportunity to shine if it was a?
I think over
across
Teams
the
now it
screen?
wouldn't have happened. So yeah, it was really good. And speak to someone from our HR team in America recently, and she said, it's still very much engaged there, that you do interviews over Teams and then second interview in person. And her experience of the difference between someone on a screen and someone in real life, face to face.
And it's one of those things. There's the culture fit as well. Is that they've got to fit with you, but you've got to fit with them. It's a two-way understanding or a two-way appraisal when you looking to employ somebody or put somebody in a placement like that.
So I've no doubt on Wednesday when these 14, 15-year-olds turn up, they'll be like rabbits in a headlight when I'm stood in front of them trying to speak to them, trying to engage with them. But hopefully.
How does it feel being a role model then? Because you're a role model on many fronts now. You're the figurehead of the business. You're doing your stuff with government. You're doing your stuff with outreach. I know you said your dad has a couple of drinks and said how proud he is of you. But how does that feel to be a role model on so many fronts?
I can't say I've ever thought of myself as a role model. I say I just want to do as much as I can. So I don't think I've ever kind of sat back and gone, I'm a role model. But yeah, it's nice when people kind of look up to you and say nice things. I don't go looking for it too often, but yeah, for example, after Friday, it was nice to get feedback from some of the people who came, and one of the speakers sent me an email, or sent us an email over the weekend, very glowing in the feedback
event
about the events and the site, and again touched on the family kind of feel about the company, and yeah, it kind of makes you feel proud. As I say, I don't take it as a kind of an appraisal of me as a person, but hopefully, in my position as a leader, I can kind of imbue that attitude across the site and that kind of ethos.
I ask everyone we speak to this question is kind of what lessons do you wish you knew when you started out, or what kind of bumps in the road do you wish you could go back and say to your younger self, look, this is going to happen, don't worry, it's going to be okay, or I wish you knew this to make life a little bit easier?
I try not to have too many regrets in life, but I go back to when I was 16, 17. So the school I went to had an Oxbridge list. So they, for want of a better word, controlled who applied to Oxford and Cambridge.
Really?
So they wouldn't just let you apply. You had to be on an approved list.
How do they stop that? Because you apply through UCAS, or so what was the?
So the school supported your application. So they obviously vetoed anyone who put.
Okay.
It was obviously to make sure their numbers looked as best as possible.
Right.
Look how many of our students get into Oxford and Cambridge. And I was lucky enough to be on the list. And they took us down. You got to choose whether you wanted to go to Oxford or Cambridge in an ideal world.
Yeah.
So you choose one, and they took you down for an overnight. Kind of, this is the university. But that's all he did. So they kind of just threw us into Oxford University, and I was like, this is not a place for me. I'm from St Helens. I don't care how clever I might be. It's not, kind of fish out of water, imposter syndrome.
So was that fear that you wouldn't be accepted, or
Yeah.
just you get in there and go, actually, you lot are not for me?
No, it's more about being accepted
right.
and kind of, as I said, I'm proud of where I'm from. I saw myself as a bit of an ambassador, but at the same time, I was like, I'm not going to fit in here. So if I was to go back and say to myself, you could have done that. Now looking back at it, I'd love the opportunity to go down there and, not shout from the rooftop because it's not my character, but be loud and proud about where I'm from. And yeah, I can be as good as anyone else here. And I still had that when I was younger. And looking back now, I shouldn't have had those worries.
That's interesting. That's not something I would have ever thought of for you, is that you'd be put off by an institution or that kind of experience.
Yeah, I mean that was still when I was young, and I had a conversation with someone recently about their daughter, I think it was, who was thinking about it, and I said, whatever you do, tell her she can do it. She might not get in. At the end of the day, it's a competitive place to get into, but don't ever feel like you can't go there. Anyone can go there. Obviously, there's financial elements to take into place, but from a personality point of view, if you're from this region, you can go anywhere you want.
Is that something we struggle with, kind of, in our institutions? Is if we're discouraging unintentionally people like yourself, who go to Oxford and say, actually, this is not for me. Are we naturally kind of filtering out some people who could be disruptors and innovators, and that's maybe something that's holding the economy back? Is we've got sort of certain people in certain boxes?
I think so. So both from a academia point of view, but also you mentioned before about the classical look at the life sciences industry about you have to go to university, and university is not for everyone. And people are maybe being discouraged from going into that industry because I don't want to go to university, but I want to be an innovator, and I can't work in life sciences because I haven't been to university. And it's kind of breaking down those barriers and encouraging us. Yeah, everyone is welcome in the industry, and the same should be applied to universities or other institutions as well, as far as I'm concerned.
So do we need to build our own centres of excellence? We need to not ask permission and say we're going to be the best in the world at this, and try and start new movements and build expertise in the regions, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I mean, that's why I was intrigued by the novel. That's why I wanted to sign up and learn more, and certainly come away from the sessions with that kind of same vision as a lot of people in the
Fantastic.
cohort.
That's good feedback. Thank you. So going back to that perception of life sciences, the stuff, what you've just described, the peptides industry potentially could be helping cure dementia. Do we have and we've got, companies that develop molecules that can go into cancer treatment. Do we tell that story well enough to young people that, the chemistry you do in high school, this can lead to, you're going to stop cancer, this could lead to, you're going to stop dementia? How do we get that PR message out a little bit better, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we do it well enough. I look back, stepdaughter's just finished her GCSEs, and one of them was chemistry, and obviously she was trying to pick my brain about, can you help me with this, and what's the answer to this? And I'm looking at it going, that's the stuff I did when I was at school, list off the periodic table and things like that. It's still very much embedded in the old approach to education, and yeah, I don't think we do enough of trying to inspire at that age. It's just kind of, can you remember as much as possible, write on a piece of paper an exam, and then find out in the future where that's going to take you, rather than trying to get into people at a young age and say, well, okay, you've got to do all the legwork if you want to do work, if you want to get a chemistry degree, etc. But this is what you can do in the future with it.
It's all the tools we've got now, and kind of increasing use of AI and personalised education. It just seems an opportunity to almost kind of content market the problem or the challenge that young people want to solve in an educational context. If you're passionate about climate change, if you're passionate about Alzheimer's, your family's been touched by it, is here's a different way of looking at it. That's what you're working towards. This is why you're studying this particular topic of chemistry or biology, because this is a building block that will get you to the point where you can change the world.
Absolutely.
How do you think businesses can help with that? How would Bachem kind of get involved in that of telling the human stories of the good work you guys do?
I say it's committing to the outreach work. So it's not just me. We've got half a dozen maybe people nominated within our company as STEM ambassadors. So encouraging them, obviously not all day, every day, but wherever possible, to go out, speak to schools, speak to students who are maybe coming to the end of the degrees, that, you know, all different levels of the educational journey, and trying to sell our story to them. And again, the same messages I've been talking about the whole morning, that, you know, we're here in the local area. You don't have to go far away. You don't necessarily have to have a degree. And, you know, we're doing our little bit. Other businesses, if they could do it as well, then collectively we can hopefully change things a bit better.
So thinking about that next generation, thinking about your vision for the business, what's the core leadership lessons and the toolkit you're looking at giving to people at different kind of layers in the organisation? So your current senior management, your very bright young people who are coming in at junior level, have you got a set kind of playbook of things that you need to impress upon them and lessons you hope they'll learn?
The big one for me, probably a big Liverpool fan, and I don't know if anybody else is in the room, or I'm going to start getting into trouble here by talking about football. I realised last year or so how much Jurgen Klopp surprisingly inspired me as a leader. Some of the things he came out with, completely not connected to football necessarily. And one of the big things was, you know, if we win, then it's all, I'm going to butcher his statement, if we win, then it's on the players. If we lose, it's on me. So the way I kind of think about it is, if things go wrong, then I'll take responsibility for it. And if things go right, then shine a light on the people that did the thing that went right. So that's the, you know, a big thing for me is trust. Giving people in my senior leadership team the trust. You know, I don't need to know everything you're doing. I trust you to do your particular part of the business. If you've got a problem, then by all means, I'm here to help you solve it. But don't feel you have to kind of justify every last minute, every last thing that you're doing day to day. So, you know, I meet with them formally one-to-one every couple of weeks, but if they've nothing to bring to me, then I'm happy to cancel the meeting and we both go away and do something more meaning in that regard. So I hope that they know they've got my trust, but they also know that I'll ultimately take responsibility if things don't go wrong. You know, I'm answerable to the corporate structure above me, and I certainly won't be throwing people under the bus if we have a problem. That's my decision. To give them the trust, give them the freedom to do what they did. If it went wrong, then it's on me.
I guess that's kind of reflected across Bachem as a culture. Do you see the rest of the UK changing? Have we moved to more of an ownership and a responsibility of leadership and an empowerment culture, do you think, in industry, or do you still see parts of industry outside of your business where people are slightly less progressive or empowering?
Yeah, I think we're still a little bit unique in that regard. I think there's still, from speaking to people, working in different businesses, they're still very beholden to results and expectations from above. And don't get me wrong, to an extent we are. You know, we have financial targets to meet, but I think within those targets there's certainly room for innovation, or giving people the freedom to kind of make mistakes, learn from them, hopefully do things better next time, and not feel that everyone's going to come jumping down on them because they've cost the company a small amount of money because something didn't work out.
Do you feel positive about life science and manufacturing and the research community in the UK for the future? You think we're getting into a stride and recovering from some challenges of the past?
I think the people I've met locally in the life sciences industry, there's a lot of really good people out there working in different areas within the health and life sciences sector. That gives me hope. The people I met, for example, last week in the peptide community nationally, again, people doing a lot of really groundbreaking, cutting edge work in the peptide field that gives me hope that again, we're as a country, as a region, we can kind of punch above our weight.
How are we seen globally? Because you must have a unique insight as being one division of a multinational. How's the UK life sciences and manufacturing seen, do you think, internationally?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever put off when we announced that, your product's being manufactured in the UK. We have our place because the manufacturing costs are actually lower in St. Helens, certainly compared to California and Switzerland.
Is that skilled labour, or that's
mainly skills labour, and obviously the infrastructure. The kind of raw material costs are pretty much global in that regard.
You're
so
not that energy intensive, I guess, the stuff you guys do, or is the electricity bill a big part of it?
Well, electricity is a big part of it. So again, that has an impact, and obviously, as a forward-thinking company, we're looking at what can we do in that regard to bring those costs down. So yeah, we play our part in terms of manufacturing costs. That can be an attractive element for customers. Certainly when they're comparing it to US-based suppliers or the European suppliers, or even south of England compared to the northwest. Those costs are a bit lower. They can be advantageous. I think within the company globally, I think people like us. They kind of see us as a friendly kind of part of the company, of people that they're happy to work with, spend time with.
But when you go to international conferences and people are talking about kind of life science sector and life science manufacturing innovation, the UK as a country still seen as a place with great R&D assets. And
yes, because there's still big hitters in the global world. AstraZeneca being one of them. GSK, have got footprints in the UK that kind of shine a light on what we're doing as a country. So then they help with the reputation. And then it's for us, companies like us who are probably less well known within the country, to kind of say, well, we're part of that as well, and we do our bit.
Iain Pritchard, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. Really enjoyed it.